Hello everyone, so this is third video in series of our discussion on High Court. If you remember, we already have delivered two another videos on High Court, and prior to this, as part of our discussion on part 6 of Indian Constitution, we already have delivered chapter on Governor, chapter on Chief Minister and State Legislature. So although chapter has already been completed, and prior to that as well, we had discussed part 5 of Indian Constitution, part 4, part 3, part 2 and part 1 of Indian Constitution. So with this High Court completion, we'll delve into subordinate court, and thereafter one more chapter will remain pending on the special status to few states under article 371, right? So after that we would be able to finish your part 6 of Indian Constitution, and then we'll enter into Panchayati Raj and all those kind of institutions. So with that information, let us see what is scheduled for today. So what is going to be scope for this particular video? So if you remember, when we were discussing first video, in the first video we discussed about the appointment, retirement, removal, this oath, tenure, qualification of judges. So all those things had been discussed. In the second video, if you remember, we discussed other aspects of High Court judges. This is the third video. So in the third video, we'll discuss three articles primarily: article 223, 222, article 223 and article 224. So the article 222 that we'll discuss, article 222 actually deals with transfer of High Court judges. Here you have this Supreme Court SC stricken through, because Supreme Court judges are not transferred, because unlike High Court where you do have another High Court, so you do have this at the horizontal level, you have multiple High Courts, High Court of Allahabad, High Court of Patna. So there are multiple 25 High Courts you do have. So transfer can happen of the High Court judges from one High Court to another High Court, but parallelly you do not have mini appellate. Then you have this acting Chief Justice, article 223, and then you have this acting judge and additional judge, article 224. So article 222, article 223 and article 224. There is one more topic that has not been put up, although that will be part of video, but that has not been put up on this particular slide, that is retired judges. So retired judges in relation to the Supreme Court, we already have studied in Supreme Court chapter. Retired judges in relation to the High Court we'll discuss here, and in the last leg of video there are 3 or 4 MCQ that is scheduled to be attempted. So I hope the scope of this video would be clear. So without wasting time, let us start with today's first topic, that is transfer of High Court judges. So transfer of High Court judges happens for multiple reasons, and reason can range from this. So it can happen for disciplinary reason, it can happen for administrative reasons, and it could be for public interest. Let us start discussing these one by one. So what is this disciplinary reason, and what could be the disciplinary ground against which a judge can be transferred from one High Court to another High Court? So suppose, let us take an example of any High Court. So suppose Amravati High Court, that is recently established in 2019. You have this 25th High Court, right? I hope that information you will have. So this is the most recent High Court that you do have, means as a India, this is the most recent High Court. Prior to this, you had this in 2013, you had this 3 High Court that was dedicated to 3 northeastern state that we already have discussed in the first video. So all those information. So coming back to this topic, so you have, suppose this, you have this Amravati High Court recently constituted. Suppose there was an advocate, you have this, how these people are appointed, how any person, any candidate is appointed as judge. I hope you do know the qualifications. So suppose you had this Advocates Bar Council, you had one person, one advocate who fulfilled all the qualification for being chosen as, for being appointed as judge in Amravati High Court. So he had that requisite 10 years of qualification, he was citizen of India, and hence when his application was considered by Collegium and Ministry of Law and Justice Affairs, finally he was appointed. So I hope you will have clarity on the process of appointment, right? So he was appointed in this Amravati High Court. Now see, when he was advocate, and he is from Andhra Pradesh itself, right, or for that matter any state example or any High Court example. So right now we are taking this Andhra Pradesh example. So when he was advocate, he had friends, he had influences, he had kith and kins in this High Court, right? Now since he has become judge, there is every chance, or there is every possibility, although there are people of character, but there can be chances that a particular high court judge, right, who happens to be from home state, his decision can be influenced. And judiciary, mind you, is one of the untouched or one of the most credible institution in our democracy, especially in relation to India, and any erosion of faith in this judiciary should not be tolerated. I am saying should not be tolerated. So just to avoid that erosion of credibility, if there is any allegation or any rumor, or and if there is some amount of seriousness as well on the character of a particular judge, right, under the grounds of disciplinary reasons, a particular judge can be transferred from one high court, and especially if this high court happens to be his home state, right, he or she can be transferred to another high court, right. There can be n number of example, or there can be n number of instances where under the disciplinary grounds a particular high court, I have just discussed one example in this video. So I hope what could be the disciplinary reasons would be clear to you. Now let us move to the administrative reasons. So what could be administrative reasons? So recently you had this controversial transfer of VK Tahil Rahmani. If you remember, if you have been keeping updated yourself with the current affairs, so you had this Tamil Nadu Madras High Court Justice VK Tahil Rahmani, and she was transferred, she was ordered to be transferred to the Meghalaya High Court. Now if you know the size of this Madras High Court, she was supposed to be, means in a year perhaps she would have been promoted, elevated as Chief Justice of Madras. She already had been acting Chief Justice of Bombay High Court, right. So she was supposed to be a year down the line or 2 years down the line, she was supposed to be elevated as Chief Justice of particular. So she did have a lot of administrative experience while acting Chief Justice as Bombay. If you know the size of Bombay High Court, it is second highest. Bombay High Court is second highest after Allahabad High Court as far as number of judges. In terms of number of judges, I am saying, so Bombay High Court had been is second highest court in numbers in terms of number of judges. So she had handled this Bombay High Court. She had been justice in this Bombay High Court. Thereafter Madras High Court is also one of the largest high court in our India. So she do have, my point is that she did have a lot of administrative experience. Now when she was transferred to this Meghalaya High Court, and mind you again Meghalaya High Court is much smaller high court. It does have only 3, the size is of only of 3 judges. So she took it as matter of punishment. There were again rumors into the political circle, and this is not, means casting rumors is not the job of UPSC spirit, but just for knowledge I am letting you know that there was some WikiLeaks case. This was related to your Gujarat, right, and she had delivered, while being in this Bombay High Court, she had delivered some judgment in this WikiLeaks case, and motives were attributed regarding this particular transfer in the political circle, that she is being punished. This is actually a punishment transfer, whereby Madras High Court, from Madras High Court, which was much higher High Court, she was being transferred to this much smaller, and she took it as a humiliation, and finally she resigned after seeking reconsideration of her transfer from the collegium. And when collegium did not reconsider it, right, although the secretary into the Supreme Court, he came out and he told that yes, there on the administrative reason, for the administrative reasons she is being transferred, but we are open, if need be we can disclose that what actually conspired, why she is being transferred. But finally Supreme Court did not clarify, except pointing out that she is being transferred for the administrative reason. Now what could be the administrative reason? So administrative reasons could be, so suppose if she is being transferred to a much smaller court, there may be a situation that this particular court or any particular court, if is being run on inefficient line, the caseload is continuously increasing and judges there are not streamlining the process. And if you have any particular justice in other high court who does have wide amount of experience, and she is being or he is being capable to run that particular high court, the other high court which is running on inefficient line, right? So for administrating, citing the administrative reason, he or she could be transferred from that much higher court to or much larger court to this smaller court, just to handle this process, just to streamline the things, so that ये cases जो हैं वो सही तरीके से solve हो पाए और disposal cases का सही तरीके से, and that could be again cited into this public interest category as well for the better administration of justice. So I hope that reasons of transfer would be clear to you. Now, who does hold this power to transfer high court judges from a particular high court judge from one high court to another? So this power has been vested into the office of president, but president does not take this decision alone. President has to consult, and mind you, this word consultation may sound very mild, right? But this is not mild statement. You had this second judge case. Say in second judge case, it was said that while what you call transferring president while transferring this high court judge from one high court to another high court, he must have consultation with the collegium. Now, in third judge's case, it was said that the collegium, in the second judge case, it was said that the opinion of this Chief Justice of India was must. And I am talking about the transfer of High Court. So, in second judge's case, it was said that opinion of Chief Justice of India by the President is a must. Finally, in the third judge's case in 1998, it was said that it is not the sole opinion of Chief Justice of India which should matter, but this opinion should be of plurality of judges. Plurality of judges means not more than one judges. And finally, it was decided that the size of collegium which will suggest president that which judge has to be transferred from which high court to another, right? The size of collegium will be of 5, Chief Justice plus 4. I hope that point would be clear. Apart from that, besides that, president also has to consult 2 another judges. And who are 2 another judges? So 2 another judges would be Chief Justice of 2 high court. Which high court? The high court from which that particular judge is being transferred, right? And the high court to which that particular judge is being transferred. So 2 chief justices of the high court, right? High court from which he is being transferred and high court to which he is being transferred, right? So only when these people give advice, president will transfer any particular. So the determining authority, if you can notice, determining authority is not president or executive. The determining, although these people, the executive can give any kind of recommendation. If you remember the flow chart when we were discussing in the first video, the appointment method, right? We had used that flow chart, that how this process of appointment works. And when we had seen there that executives, chief minister as well was open to give suggestion in the matters of appointment of judges. Chief minister, if you remember the flow chart, when a normal judge was to be appointed, you had this advocate. Suppose you had this advocate, any advocate or any person who was eligible for the appointment. So first the process was being started by the Chief Justice of that High Court for the appointment plus 2 judges, right? And thereafter that file was being sent to the CM. CM in turn would send to the governor. And if you remember, we have said there that CM as well, if in his opinion, if there is any candidate who is fulfilling the criteria, CM can forward this file to the Chief Justice of that High Court, and the High Court may see. CM can just suggest. Ultimate determining authority would be Chief Justice of High Court plus 2 judges, and you need not to be confused. When I am saying the Chief Justice of High Court plus 2 judges is suggesting the name, you need not to be confused that what is the role of Chief Justice of India. So Chief Justice of India's role will again be determining, but you will, in that case, you will have to refer to that video where we had discussed this this flow chart, right? So my point is that executive also does have hand, right, in matters of appointment, in matters of appointment, but they are not determining authority. If you remember, after this governor was sending file to the Ministry of Law and Justice Affair, and Ministry of Law and Justice Affair was sending file to the Chief Justice of India plus that collegium of 2, right? So when this Chief Justice of India plus 2, that collegium was sending a suggestion, right? this Ministry of Law and Justice Affair had some powers that based on some intelligence report from IB, right, they could have asked this Chief Justice of India plus 2 collegium to reconsider the name, citing these objectionable intelligence bureau report against that particular judge. So they do have role, means executive does have role, but they do not have that determining role. I hope that point would have been clear to you. One more thing, if you would have noticed, the size of collegium. So in matters of appointment, this Supreme Court collegium, the size is very larger, CGI plus 4. But if you remember, when we were discussing this appointment process, this size of collegium was Chief Justice of India plus 2. It was not 4. Again, I am repeating this information that, see, President while transferring or taking the decision on the transfer of one high court judge to another high court judge, right, he has to consult this collegium, and this consultation again is a mild word. This is actually a constitutional word, right. It necessarily means concurrence, right. Whatever opinion that this collegium gives, President will have to concur it, right. Again, the same point, executive does have role, but they do not have that determining role. Along with this collegium, the President will also have to consult two chief justices of that 2 high court, the donor high court and the recipient high court. So here you do have this flow chart. Transfer of high court judges, the decision has to be taken by the President, but he will be just transferring only those judges who has been recommended by Chief Justice of India plus 4 plus Chief Justice of High Court, CJHC, Chief Justice of High Court, donor and recipient. I hope the transfer, how this transfer and the reasons of transfer would be clear to you. Now, in the past, if you go, there have been instances where this transfer or particular tool of transfer has been used to punish upright judges. So in emergency, if I take the example, if you remember when we were discussing the situation of judiciary in emergency, if you remember the cases of HR Khanna, who had ultimately, he was very senior, and I am talking about Supreme Court appointment right now, not talking about transfer of High Court judges. We will come back to the transfer of High Court judges and we will take few examples there as well. So you had this example of HR Khanna, who was part of this ADM Jabalpur case and Keshwanand Bharti case, and because he was part of this Keshwanand Bharti case, which has floated this basic structure doctrine, and finally in ADM Jabalpur case as well, this man HR Khanna had given dissenting judgment regarding this Article 21 and Article 20, right. I hope you do know this ADM Jabalpur case does have relevance with this Article 20 and Article 21, right. So during the time of emergency, you had this habeas corpus habeas corpus case which had gone into this ADM Supreme Court, right, and ADM Jabalpur case, actually it was nothing. ADM had given the judgment that the right to this Article 20 and Article 21, right, their enforcement cannot be guaranteed when emergency is in operation. Finally, into Supreme Court, when this judgment was sent against this, Supreme Court although gave supporting judgment, but you had this HR Khanna who had given this dissenting judgment that no matter what the times are, no matter what the political situation are, but you do have certain basic right. People do have, individual does have certain basic right, and which cannot be taken away even in times of emergency. And finally, he was punished in 1977 when he was scheduled to be elevated. If the tradition of appointing senior most judges of Supreme Court as Chief Justice of India would have been followed, this HR Khanna would have been elevated to the position of Chief Justice of India, but he was denied the Chief Justice of India judgeship, and finally he is resigned. So there are n number of examples during the emergency, and this was not only emergency example. We should not villainize Indira Gandhi's times, right? This practice even in during the times of first Prime Minister, this attempt was being made. There were various judges that this our first Prime Minister was unhappy with, and he also wanted to do same thing. And it is not only about this Congress and all those things. There have been times, we'll take the example of recent past as well, where you had this. So always the attempt of executive is always to have as much control, but our constitutional what you call guidelines, or the processes that we have set, that that have ensured that these guidelines are followed, right? And still you have this judicial primacy right now, although in parliamentary process we should not call executive primacy this or judicial primacy. We are working on a method of checks and balances, right? So that was the thing. Now coming back to this lecture about the transfer of high court judges, so we had taken example of this HR Khanna, and HR Khanna was not the lone who was punished into the Supreme Court case, right? In 1973 as well, this superseding of judges happened, and the most senior judge was not appointed as Chief Justice of India. So similar treatment was made to the High Court judges as well. So during the time of emergency, you had this High Court judges, whosoever High Court judge who tried to give justice, who tried to not follow. If you remember, you had this call of committed judiciary that was coming from INC at that time during the emergency, that what we want is committed judiciary to the goals of executive. So whosoever judge into the high court cases was trying to give any judgment which was unfavorable to the executive at that time. So you had this wide scale transfer of what you call judges, right, from one high court to another. They were being thrown from their home state or from their nearby state to the distant state, right? And this all that I am speaking right now, this may have political undertones. So what you have to follow into the mains and interview, what has been written here and not what I am speaking right now, because as I already told you that this does have political undertone, just to make you understand that what has been the post-independent political history and what has been the judiciary travel in those times. So I hope those points you would have understood. Rather in 1970s and 1980s or 1990s as well, you had these various judges. Transfer was a punishment method, and there was another positive inducement method that was being used. So whosoever judges remained pliant, they were offered judgeship to what you call they were given nomination into the Rajya Sabha, they were awarded with the Padma. So there has been inducement as well and transfer. So right now we are focusing on the transfers only. So during times of emergency, judges who attempt to preserve and protect the fundamental rights or constitutionalism, they were deprived of their timely promotion or punishment by transfer. And make sure that whenever you are giving any kind of writing, any kind of statement into the mains, which may possibly, and I am saying which may even remotely have political undertones, try to balance then that by, because you never know that what kind of mindset even the examiner does have. Although when you are reaching at the stage of 59 or 55 and you are examiner, right, you can expect as a what you call aspirant, you might expect that this person of 55 years old and 59 years of old, while acting as examiner, while checking your copies, right, will set aside his own political biases. But if he senses your political biases into your writing, then there is every chance that your marks may be damaged. So whenever you are even remotely putting any example which may have, although avoid having these political examples into, or even those kind of example which may possibly have any kind of political undertones, avoid doing that. But if there is any compulsion that you have to put, then try to balance it by, right, try to balance it by another example. So recently you took one example of 97, because you never know, means we are expecting that yes, this 55 or 60 years person, right, he may not have any political biases, but at the end of the day he is also a human being, right, he may have certain kind of biases. So just to avoid that kind of damage, what you have to do is that you have to do balancing thing. And balancing thing is that when we are taking example of 1970, 5, right? You can take a recent example as well. So recently you had two controversial judges transfer. The one case we already have talked about this Madras High Court Judge V.K. Tahil Ramani, and sorry if I am pronouncing it wrong, it is Tahil Ramani, right? So sorry for from my this TN friends, Tamil Nadu friends, if I am pronouncing it wrong, you can correct me, but this is what I can read it, right? So you had recent example. This example we already have read. The another example was of this S. Muralidharan. So you had this S. Muralidharan, who was justice in this Delhi High Court, and he had on a particular day he had reprimanded Delhi police for a delay in filing cases, FIR against some right-wing leaders. And the day he reprimanded, on the same evening at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. around, he received a fax, and the fax was regarding his transfer to another high court. Now, if you connect these two, it may sound that it was a punitive transfer, right? Because on the day he is reprimanding Delhi police, which is under Union Ministry of Home Affairs, right? And you already know that what happened in Delhi violence, right? You had this allegation from both sides, political allegation from both sides. So in those kind of circumstances, if a particular high court judge who is reprimanding Delhi police, which is under MHA, right? If he is reprimanding Delhi police, right, and he is being transferred in the same night, you can understand that what will be, if you connect these two dots, right, you can figure out that, okay, where this allegation will lie at, right? So this allegation finally lied at the doors of MHA, that MHA, it was an act of vendetta on the part of MHA, but finally later on it was found that his transfer order had been recommended. And as I already told you, see, there is no point of calling out executive hand in matters of appointment and in matters of what you call these transfer, because ultimately the ultimate decision is taken by collegium, right? If collegium itself wants to be influenced by political consideration, then how can you attribute motives to the political parties or executive who are politicians at the end of the day? So the first blame should lie at the collegium, doors of collegium, but later on in this particular case as well, it was clarified later on, it was the facts that came into the public domain, it was found out that his transfer order had already been considered by the collegium 20 days prior to the day that he reprimanded Delhi police, right? So there was no, although in political circles you might read so many things, but as I told that the decisions regarding the determining decision regarding the transfer and appointment of a particular judge or non-transfer or non-promotion of a particular judge is taken by this collegium, right? So the first blame, if there is any, right, the first blame should always be on the collegium rather than targeting this executive, right? Ultimately this collegium, who evolved this collegium process? It is not the executive. Executive had tried to have this NJAC in which they try to carve out role for themselves, but ultimately judiciary abolished this NJAC, 99th amendment, if you remember, right? You had this 99th constitutional amendment through which in 2014 you had this emergence of NJAC, but finally in 2015 this NJAC as a body, as an institution where executive does have certain amount of role in matters of appointment, in matters of transfer of these judges, that was abolished, calling it against attack on the independence of judiciary, right? So when you already have abolished this NJAC, where the executive had some kind of hand. So in matters of appointment, my sole opinion is that in matters of appointment or in matters of transfer, calling out executive on wrong foot, right, that would be a wrong thing from my assessment, means ethically as well, because they are determining that if there is anybody to blame, from my assessment again it would be collegium. So what could be done when you have these kind of cases popping up, right? What collegium can do is, for the best interest of transparency or for better administration of justice, what this And this example we had taken in the matters of appointment as well, that when a eligible or a deserving judge is not being promoted to the Supreme, there is pool of talent which is available at the disposal of Supreme Court while considering for the promotion of High Court judges to the Supreme Court judges, or when matters of transfer is being considered, right? So all those things, if a person has been transferred, right, if for the disciplinary reason, for the administrative reason, all those things should be, a portal kind of thing can be created, where in matters of appointment, number one, in matters of appointment, what you can do is that if a person has not been considered, or somebody of the same or similar seniority has been given priority into the similarly placed judges, right, you can put the information as Supreme Court judge or Supreme Court collegium. That collegium decision or collegium consideration can be put into the public domain on that particular portal, that why a particular candidate has been given a priority in relation to the other judge who was similarly placed, right? So that was the one in relation to the appointment. Similarly, in relation to the transfer as well, public information can be put up on that kind of portal, that why a particular judge is being, and especially in the circumstances. So in example of this VK Tahil Rahmani, in example of S Muralidharan, in example of S Muralidharan, in convocation ceremony, sorry, not convocation ceremony, when he was in farewell ceremony, right, he himself clarified this point, that his transfer is not justified. But in case of VK Tahil Rahmani, the Secretary of Supreme Court had to come out, although he did not give all the facts to the public, but he clearly said that it is happening for the reasons of public interest, right, for the administrative reasons he has been transferred. But okay, again, we don't know what would have conspired, so we'll have to completely, as a UPSC aspirant, no, we are not political activists whose duty is to cast aspersion. Yes, you may have some kind of personal opinion, you can form, you can have that kind of discussion on the chai and tapri dhaba, right? But those kind of discussion would not come, should not come into your mains paper or in interviews, right? So that was my point. So suggestion, same suggestion we had given in matters of appointment as well, and same suggestion we are extending here as well, that more transparency is required, public display of information is required. So you had at the time of this Deepak Mishra, ex-CGI, if you remember, you had this Deepak Mishra, there was a portal which functioned for around 6 or 7 months, where all the critical information, or at least the information which may possibly become controversial, so regarding the transfer, regarding the appointment, all those information were being put out. But that portal ran only for 6-7 months. After this, Chief Justice, ex-Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, assumed the charge. Perhaps again, I will not try to call out the motives, that what were the motives, but during his tenure, right, this portal stopped functioning. So that was the thing. So that portal, my suggestion ultimately the same, that such kind of portal should be there, right? And these, for the matters of transparency, for the reasons of transparency, those information can be put out into the public domain. So see is this VK Tahil Rahmani. Now this acting Chief Justice. So you had this article 222. Now we are discussing this article 223. So what is this acting Chief Justice? So this acting Chief Justice we had discussed into the Supreme Court case, Supreme Court chapter as well, but this acting Chief Justice is in relation. So you have this Chief Justice who can be, means he is also at the end of the day human, right? So he can be ill, or he can at times go to what you call some long leave, he can go on some long leave, or suddenly, unfortunately, if to the unfortunate of any person, if he happens to be Chief Justice and if he suddenly dies, right, and this process of selecting this Chief Justice may take time. If you remember the flow chart, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 months, because you have this back and forth communication between Chief Justice Office, Collegium, and then Ministry of Law and Justice Affairs. Then if there is a need for the reconsideration by the Ministry of Law and Justice Affairs, so that is also, so all this process of appointment does take time. So in these kind of situation where you have this illness of a Chief Justice has died, or if he is going on a mandatory or long leave, in that case a particular judge can be appointed as Chief Justice, right, for that time duration, and he will be not full-time Chief Justice, he will just be acting Chief Justice. So VK Tahil Rahmani that we saw in the previous slides, she has remained twice acting Chief Justice of the Bombay High Court, right? So CLB means if any person has to be appointed acting Chief Justice, he or she will be appointed by the President. And so here you have, right? So President may appoint, right? But President does have power that while deciding that which person will be acting Chief Justice, so the most logical reasoning could be that senior most judge of that particular high court. So whosoever is senior most judge, right? Because he do have wide amount of experience or wide amount of knowledge of that particular high court's functioning. So the senior most judge of that particular high court should be appointed acting Chief Justice. But that may be a logical correct statement, that may be logically correct, but it is not the senior most judge of that particular high court. But President can appoint any judge of that high court to act as acting Chief Justice. I hope that point. So one thing or one learning here is that any of the judge of that high court, right, can be appointed by the President for that purpose to act as acting Chief Justice. But again, this is not discretionary power of the President. I hope that point. So appointment of acting Chief Justice, when the office of Chief Justice of HC High Court is vacant, or when Chief Justice by reason of absence or otherwise reason we already have discussed, by brief illness, or if he is going on any long leave, or if he has suddenly died, right? So by any reason, right, unable to perform his duty of office, then the duties of office shall be performed by such one of the other judges of the court as the President may appoint for that purpose. I hope this acting Chief Justice point would be clear to you. Now we are moving to the next slide to discuss additional and acting judges. So these two are separate word, mind you. Additional judges separate and acting judges is separate, right? So this is Article 224 that deals with it, additional judges as well and acting judges as well, right? If you remember, when we were discussing this Supreme Court, you did not have this additional judges or acting judges, but you had this ad hoc judges, and ad hoc judges were being appointed to fulfill quorum. When Supreme Court did not have the quorum and Supreme Court cannot function without the quorum, what were the numbers of quorum? We are not getting into that. And what is the quorum? The basic terminologies, I hope by now, when we already have discussed the Parliament and President and all these stuff, right? I hope that basic terminologies you will not expect me to explain every now and then, right? So in absence of quorum, to fulfill the quorum, you had this appointment of ad hoc judges into the Supreme Court. Now into High Court, you do not have this concept of ad hoc judges. Instead of ad hoc judges, what you do have is additional judges and acting judges. So what is this additional judges? If you want to understand, instead of getting into this article and reading this, if you want to try to drive your own logic, what could be the additional? Who could be the additional judges? So additional, in addition, so there is something called sanction strength. So if you remember, when we were, or rather here you do have slide, right? So every high court does have some sanction strength, that this particular high court will have this number of judges, this particular, that will keep varying depending on the population and the number of crimes or number of cases that high court does entertain. So right now this is the sanction strength of 25 high court that we do have. So Allahabad High Court stands at the top, then you have this Bombay High Court, and at the bottom you have this Meghalaya and Sikkim High Court with three judges, right? So you have this something called sanction strength, right, that has been sanctioned. And who will decide? If you remember, in the first video we had discussed that who does have this determining authority, who is going to decide that how many number of judges a particular high court will have? Parliament, right? Parliament is ultimately going to decide, right? No sir, not the Parliament, it is the President who will decide finally that which high court will have, what will be the sanction strength of which high court. So it is the President. So I hope that point would be clear. Now you have this sanction strength, but the sanction strength at times may be not enough, right? You may have sudden flow of the cases, and the sanctioned strength of the high court is unable to handle that load of cases. So for a year and a half, or for 2 years, right, you may have need additional manpower, right? So to tackle to that increased number of cases, you have this concept of additional judges under Article 222. So recently, if you see, Allahabad High Court right now does have 84 judges, 84 additional judges I am talking about. So that additional judges, number of additional judges is exceeding the sanction strength of the Allahabad High Court. So you have only 76 permanent judges, but against that 76 permanent judges, you have 84 additional judges. Bombay High Court sanction strength is 71, then 23 is what you call this additional number of additional, and similarly you have different high court which does have this appointment of additional additional judges. Now who does appoint this additional, the purpose, the objective of appointing this additional judges would be clear to you. Now who does have power to appoint the additional judges into this high court? So ultimately it is the president again who does have power to appoint additional judges, right? Now there is some problem. Before that, let us discuss the information, and thereafter we will discuss that what is the problem with the additional judges. So additional judges can be appointed only for maximum 2 years, right? Not more than 2 years. It could be 1 year, it could be 1 year, a year and a half, it could be 6 months. So depending on the caseload of that particular high court, a person can be appointed. If he is duly qualified for the appointment to the high court, then only. It can't be that any person can be appointed high court, only if he is fulfilling criteria to be appointed into the high court. So if you remember the 10-year criteria and citizen of India, the A+B criteria, if you remember, right? So a person can be appointed who is duly qualified to be appointed into the high court, and that additional judge will be appointed for not more than 2 years. Although the practice is, again, this is not mentioned in the constitution, but the practice is that if a person has been appointed as additional judges, right, generally after 2 years, depending on the performance, mind you, I am telling you, depending on the performance, he is generally after this 2 years, or the first situation would be either his term would be extended as additional judge itself, or if there is a vacancy into this permanent judge position, he will be elevated to the position of this permanent judge, right? So that is the practice that we are following. But now there is a problem. For whatever 2 years or whatever 1 year that he has been appointed, that additional judge has been appointed, he remains into a kind of probation period. Although constitutionally it has been mentioned that the position of this additional judge, he does have all the powers, he does have all the privileges. So he is in no way lesser than, his position is in no way lesser than these high court permanent judges, and his position is not even lesser than chief justice of that particular high court, but that is a constitutional position. Now this additional judge who has been appointed for say 2 years, he already know that if I do not remain in good books of chief justice of high court, if I do not remain on good terms with the executive of that state, there is every chance that my name may not be considered for further extension, either further extension for 2 years or for the elevation as permanent judges. So most of the time, means these people, again I am not casting aspersion on character of any particular judge. There may be a particular individual who may be very principled man, and despite non-consideration, he may, or there have been cases as well, in 90% of the cases, these people despite of they do not attempt to remain in good books with the chief justice of high court, and they continue giving right judgment, the upright judgment. But there has been instances where, and there is likelihood as well, right? If I talk about the likelihood, what is the likelihood? If he has to get this what you call permanent judge, right, he will have to remain in good books, and that's why it is said that he will remain vulnerable for the manipulation, because he has to be appointed, right? He will have to have good terms with this chief justice of high court. Now if you notice, just a moment, now if you notice, see, what was the objective? The objective was to appoint these additional judges for 2 months or 2 years or 1 year, and as soon the arrear vanishes, right, his job will be over and he will be removed. But this load of the cases has become a standing problem. You have this continuously increasing problem, you have this continuously increasing cases, and load is never, the load of cases is never going to decrease. So my suggestion or the constitutional expert suggestion would be that instead of having these people as additional judges, what we should be doing is that we should increase the number of permanent judge requirement of every high court. Because if they would have been, see, their job was temporary, but if you are appointing them continuously and extending their term and elevating them as permanent judges later on, why to have this additional judges? Instead of, if you have this requirement of 76 plus 84, if you have this requirement of 71 plus 23 in Bombay and in Allahabad, why not to have them as permanent judges? Because most of the time in Allahabad court, if I talk about, you have this additional, sometime it will be 84, sometime it will be 80, sometime it will be 76. So most of the time it has this requirement of additional judges in Allahabad High Court has remained more or less more than 70. So what you can do is, what president can do is that instead of having these people as additional judges, you can put this number as of the permanent judges as 76 plus 70, right? You can directly increase the strength of this permanent judges, so that this likelihood of vulnerability, likelihood of manipulation of these additional judges could be reduced to the maximum extent, right? I hope that point you would have understood. Let me read it. Generally, those additional judges are elevated as permanent judges after completion of their term based on their efficiency and performance, but that is a legal terminologies. We already know that what happens in judicial circle, it is not only this efficiency and performance is not the sole criteria. However, the provision of additional judges was supposed to be a temporary arrangement to address increased load, but with ever increasing loaded of cases, there lies a legitimate case for increasing permanent judges in every high court than relying on this temporary arrangement. So I hope this additional judge you would have understood. Now we are moving to the next same article to discuss this acting judges. So acting judges is nothing when you have this permanent judge who is going again on the long leave or by reason of absence, right? If a permanent judge is not able to perform his duty, in that case you will have this acting judges. So acting judges and acting chief justice, that you remember we discussed in article 223. So the objective, I hope, what is the objective for being a person to be appointed acting judge, the objective need not to be clarified. So I hope this, there is no need of discussing this acting judge. Now this is your retired judges, right? So if you remember, again, if you would have noticed, for the appointment of additional judge, for the appointment of this acting judges, and for appointment of acting chief justice, who could appoint? It was the president who was appointing. In both these cases, acting chief justice, additional judges, right? It was the president who was appointing authority. But when retired judges are to be appointed, right, the purpose has not been clarified in the constitution. In relation to the additional judges, in article 223, it has been clearly mentioned that why he will be appointed. He will be appointed if there is arrear of case for the temporary period, right? But in relation to the retired judges, a judge who has been retired from high court, right? Just a moment. So in relation to these high court judges, retired judges, sorry, right? In what situation a retired judge is supposed to give an appointment in a high court, right? That has not been mentioned into the constitution. In constitution, simply it has been written that chief justice. So here the determining authority is chief justice of high court may at any time with the previous consent of president. So chief justice of that particular high court will take the decision that any particular retired judge, and while considering that a retired judge for the appointment into the high court, right, his choice will not be limited only to the retired judges of that particular high court. Any judge who has retired from any of the high court, right, he can be considered by the chief justice of high court, right? But that he will do only with the previous consent of president. Request any person who has held the office of judge of any high court, right? So this again I am comparing this retired judges we had discussed into the Supreme Court as well, and for a person to be appointed into the Supreme Court as for the position of this retired judges, right, of course the objective would be to handle this increased load of case. That would be the objective if we want to deduce the logical objective, because constitution has not given any clear specification. So of course the objective would be to handle this increased load of course. cases, right? So in relation to the Supreme Court, when we were discussing this position of retired judges, the eligibility criteria for a person to be appointed for this position, there were two eligibility criteria, and the two eligibility criteria was that any retired judge of Supreme Court could be appointed. So the first was that any retired judge of SC, or a person who has retired from any high court, but at the time of retirement he was eligible for the appointment to the Supreme Court. So there were two eligibility criteria in relation to the Supreme Court retired judges. But here, for a person to be appointed into the High Court for this position of retired judges, this criteria, the second criteria that I talked about, that if any person has retired, suppose from the subordinate court, from the lower court, and if at the time of retirement he was eligible to be appointed into the High Court, right, he cannot be appointed into the High Court for this position, he cannot be considered. So the second eligibility criteria that we discussed into the relation of Supreme Court is not available. So only those, let me again confirm, only those people who has retired from any high court as judge, only those people can be appointed to this position. I hope that eligibility criteria would be clear. But while appointing this for the position of retired judges, Chief Justice needs to take permission of that person who is being appointed. He needs to obtain the permission. While in the previous case for the appointment of additional judges, his permission was not required. I hope that that point you would have understood. While attending this High Court as retired judges, a person does enjoy all the power, all the perks or the privileges as a normal judge, as a permanent judge. While attending, he shall have jurisdiction, powers and privileges, and shall discharge the duties of judge of the High Court. So I hope all these things, the three article, Article 222, Article 223, Article 224 would be clear to you. Now we are moving into the last leg of this video, and that is MCQ. So here you do have this first MCQ, second MCQ, third MCQ. So these are the three MCQ that I expect you to attempt. So with this, we are wrapping up this High Court lecture until we come up with the next lecture. Till then, bye bye.